everyone, and welcome to this month's edition of Breck Buzz. I'm your host, Haley Littleton from the town of Breckenridge, and stay tuned because today we're going to be talking all about housing with our housing director, Laurie Best, and council member, Dick Carleton. And welcome back to Breck Buzz. I am joined by Laurie Best, who is in charge of all things housing at the town of Breckenridge, and Councilmember Dick Carleton, who sits on our housing committee and is very involved with housing through our town council. So thank you for joining me today.
Happy to be here.
So the first thing I kind of want to talk about is just we're working on our overall housing strategy. How we've talked a lot about balance, how we're going to balance what living in Breckenridge looks like. And, you know, Dick, at the council level, there's been a lot of discussion about the housing strategy for the town. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, you bet. I mean, you hit on it. It's all about balance. There's many that think we're a little out of balance right now. So I think we need to make some moves. We're looking at, I mean, honestly, nothing's off the table for us at this point. We are really looking at a very comprehensive list. We're very fortunate to have Laurie as our director of housing, who's well known nationwide and certainly the expert in the state on this subject. And we've accomplished a lot in Laurie's tenure. But the need grows faster than we're able to get things done. So that balance, we need a multi-pronged approach. You know, you've heard there's no silver bullet. There's no one solution. Mm-hmm. So the multi-pronged, we need some regulation of some kind. Mm-hmm. We need to build more workforce housing. We need to have some incentive programs to get units deed restricted and protected in the workforce housing sector. We've got to be creative. There's no bad ideas. We need to be collaborative and work together. We need to have an accountability side and some enforcement. And we need funds, to do this, to fund the incentive programs and everything else. So we need to look at fees, I think, as well.
Yeah, so like you said, we're really considering everything. Nothing's off the table. Laurie, maybe tell us also why having a diverse housing strategy is so important.
Well, I think, and certainly I feel the urgency, the sense of urgency from the council that this really is a high priority. But, a diverse inventory or types of housing that are affordable to different segments of our economy is super, super important to be a real town. A real town has a very diverse workforce. It has people that are at different points of their lives and their careers. I think it's one thing that the town has done really well over the last 20 years is make sure that we focus on providing a diversity of housing types, diversity of price points, and not just focus on one segment of our workforce, because that's what makes us a real town. It sets us apart from a lot of the other resort jurisdictions that have kind of focused on maybe lower AMIs or apartments only and kind of lost their middle class. So from the very get-go, we have addressed the needs of middle-class households. We've addressed the very low AMI households, and I just think it's super important to retain that kind of diversity of the inventory.
Right.
And I totally agree, Laurie. I mean, well said. And the workforce is the soul of our community. The middle class is the soul of our community. And we can't forget that. We can't lose our focus on that. Mm-hmm. To maintain the character of this community, we have to have available housing for our workforce in the valley.
Right. So. And I think that, also like you said about a diverse workforce, when we talk about workforce, we're talking about, restaurant or ski area workers, but we're also talking about firefighters and teachers and all of those things, police officers, everything that makes our community really function. Mm-hmm. And it's so important. And, I think everybody's pretty well versed in the housing that we continue to build. And so kind of wanted to talk a little bit more today about some of the other more creative programs we're also doing alongside housing, because I think we've all said before we can't necessarily build our way out of this problem. And one of the programs that we've started is Housing Helps. And so Laurie and Dick, I'd love for you to just tell us more about this program.
Yeah, I think it's super important to complement the new construction, because
Yes.
new construction is obviously a big part of what we do. But like you said, we can't build our way out of this. There's not enough land or money to build our way out of this. So it's super, super important to preserve some of the existing inventory, and especially that inventory that historically served our workforce. You know, those neighborhoods and those complexes where locals have lived historically, and those are at risk right now. The folks that are living in those communities, those neighborhoods, those complexes are being displaced. And so we've sort of been working on programs to help preserve some of that existing inventory. And, you know, when you actually are able to acquire a deed restriction on an existing unit, you know, that is a very cost-effective way of acquiring a deed restriction. You know, cost of construction, risk of construction, obviously those are, that can be scary. But when you're acquiring just the deed restriction, it's a much simpler process. It's a much more cost-effective process. So Housing Helps is a way that we do that. It's a way that we acquire deed restrictions on existing homes, and it preserves neighborhoods. It saves those units from converting to something other than just local neighborhoods. But it's a great program. We started it about 2 years ago, kind of modeled it after a program in Vail that made it our own. Basically we work with current owners that own a market rate unit and are willing to accept a deed restriction on their property, and we will compensate them for that deed restriction. We can make it happen very quickly and easily, but that unit will forever and in perpetuity be preserved for local workforce housing and no vacation housing, no short-term rental. So super, super important tool for preserving neighborhoods and acquiring deed restrictions as opposed to building new. And we've had some great success stories, and I remember many of them because I basically process each and every one. And you know, it's just amazing how we've impacted people's lives. We've impacted people's lives at the same time we've gained a deed restriction. So some of the ones that kind of stick in my mind. We had a family during COVID. They were struggling. They'd been in the community a long time, but because of COVID, had some issues, and their hours were reduced, and they were really having trouble staying in the home that they'd been in and had raised their kids in. Sort of middle-aged folks. And they were at risk of losing their home. And so we went in and we compensated them for a deed restriction on that property, and it's a 3-bedroom home, which is one thing that's great about Housing Helps is we're getting homes for families.
Right.
So you know, they were able to use the proceeds from selling the deed restriction to us to get right with the lender. And you know, I actually just saw them a couple weeks ago. I was riding my bike by their house, and they waved, and they were so appreciative of that. You know, the stress of going through, you know, their job loss and the stress with the lenders and all of that, we were able to help them with that. And there's other ones. There's many other ones. We've helped people get through special assessments with their HOAs, and that's a really important piece because, you know, we want our deed restricted inventory to be in good shape and well maintained, and sometimes that involves a pretty hefty special assessment. So, you know, if you're local and you don't have a high income to get through one of those special assessments, it can be really challenging. So we've helped a few people with special assessments. So we use Housing Helps for current owners. And they can use the proceeds for whatever they choose to use them for. But we've had a lot of people reinvest those proceeds in their house, so they can update their house. They can add a garage that they wanted. So the existing owners frequently use Housing Helps for something along those lines. We also use Housing Helps if somebody wants to buy a unit, and they can use the Housing Helps funds as part of their down payment. We had a couple that just got married, and they were able to use housing helps to buy a great house that's their first house as a married couple. So it works for both people that are interested in buying a market rate unit as well as people that are in a market rate unit. And it really helps to preserve our neighborhoods, because these are homes that are in our neighborhoods.
Yeah, and hats off to Laurie for that when she brought that to council, and we quickly jumped on it, and it's really her program. It's awesome.
Yeah, and if people want to learn more, they can go to our website and check out our housing page and learn all about it, and look about getting to the program. Something we've also been doing kind of in the same vein is buy downs. People might not necessarily know what that is, so maybe share a little bit about what that means.
Sometimes people confuse buy downs with housing helps, because they're basically both about acquiring a deed restriction. Unfortunately or fortunately, with buy downs, we actually have to acquire the unit to get the deed restriction. What we do is we watch the MLS, and when properties come available that are sort of in the price point where they might serve our locals, we will step in and actually buy that unit and own it, put a deed restriction on it, and flip it. Unlike most house flippers, we're not flipping to go up and flipping down. but basically what we're doing is we're paying for the cost of that deed restriction on that unit. And the buy downs have been super successful as well. We've had a couple buy downs that we ended up selling to local business that could use them for their employees. And most of the time we will do a buy down if the property is available for sale and it's in our price point, and we're really concerned about that unit flipping from locally occupied to a vacation home or a short-term rental. So that's when we will step in and buy them. But
it's really, it's just so exciting that I think it probably will give people a sense of comfort knowing that we're on it, we're paying attention.
We're doing our best. It's, we need the entire community coming together to work on this issue.
Yeah, and Dick, something about housing that council has been talking a lot about recently is what we call ADUs, or accessory dwelling units. Can you share a little bit about just that conversation, and maybe both of you, why having accessory dwelling units is also important?
Yeah, you bet. That mother-in-law apartments, whatever, are the more traditional names, but today in Denver, they're putting, tiny homes in people's backyards as an ADU. So there's a lot of opportunities in different in all neighborhoods and such. But it's an opportunity, again, as Laurie said, for us to acquire a deed restriction on a dwelling unit. And it's often a great win-win for the owner. It helps offset their mortgage payment with some rental income, and it's a home for members of our workforce. So we've recently started exploring some opportunities in our Wellington neighborhood and Lincoln Park. So we're expanding, we're experimenting, we're trying, and that might be an opportunity for some incentives around. If you create an ADU, we will incent you in a way or another. And we're all very intrigued by the idea. We all know there's some illegals out there, right? And how can we bring them into the fold, and help them make that a legal ADU, and at the same time acquire a deed restriction on it. So we're really looking at that as well. The stuff we can't compromise on are the life safety issues there. But some of the code stuff, I think maybe we can wiggle a little. So we're looking at that as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think ADUs are a great opportunity. We should continue to explore that, because a lot of other resort communities have really pushed the ADUs, and particularly towns that have a large percentage of houses that might be dark or vacant, second homes where the owner isn't around a lot. It's nice to have an ADU in some of those larger homes as well, because the person that occupies that ADU can kind of take care of the the house.
Yeah, it's paying attention.
And keeps the lights on, so you don't have dark neighborhoods. So
Right.
I think it's a win-win in the bigger houses, as well as, helping some of our locals be able to sort of have a little bit of revenue from an additional unit and be able to help them with the mortgage. So lots of opportunities. And I think historically we were sort of neutral on ADUs. We didn't incentivize them, but we didn't disincentivize them. But I think it's all about exploring opportunities to see where they're appropriate. You have enough parking. They're not going to impact the neighbors. It seems like it could be a win-win.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like we're kind of, looking at wherever we can get a unit, we will take it.
Yes, please.
Yes. And a lot of this is really, housing is so important to help our businesses so that they can have employees. And of course, with COVID and now after COVID, we hear a lot from businesses about how, recruitment is hard or finding enough employees. And so, Dick, I know you deal with this on the personal level, but just how important is it for businesses to have housing for their employees?
I believe it's critical. The workforce. For instance, last spring, I had a family with a newborn who was notified with 30 days notice that the owner just sold the unit and they had to be out. And 3 kids and nowhere to live. So we were lucky enough where I knew someone in the community that had a 3-bedroom rental. We were able to master lease. So the business wrote, signed the lease. We discounted a bit for the employee. We took care of the minor maintenance for the owner, made it really, really easy for the owner. And so that's one way for businesses to do it. Buying units, I was fortunate enough to be able to have a deed restricted unit that we were able to purchase. For me as a business person, I'm trying to, scratch and scrape and get housing for my people any way I can.
Right. And I'm sure that's common with most business owners.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And, you have long-term people, you watch them, grow up and have families.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking when you see them leave, leave the community because they lost their housing.
Yeah, and Laurie, maybe share a little bit more about how we've been working with businesses on housing.
Sure. I think we're super interested in supporting local businesses because, like Dick said, I think, to be successful in this community, an employer's got to be thinking about housing as a component of their business plan because, it's just so challenging. So we're always looking for opportunities to support the businesses. And like I said, we've had a couple of businesses buy our buy-down units, which was great. We did a program last winter that was called LEAP. It's Local Employer Housing Assistance Program, LEAP. And what we did was we master leased some units that were dispersed throughout town to the local businesses. We actually had a lottery and picked the businesses that were able to sort of master lease from the town, and then the business could put their employees into those units. I think it really worked well and helped a lot of employers just get through last winter. And then at the end of it was intended as a seasonal lease. At the end of the lease in the spring, we offered those units to those employers to purchase and allowed them to utilize their lease payments towards their down payment. So I tried to facilitate getting some of these units out into the hands of our local businesses.
And these were buy-down units.
Yeah, they were buy-down units.
Yeah, so it's cool to see how everything kind of funnels into itself and how we use all of these different strategies to, support people living here.
Yeah.
The last thing I would love to talk about is something that plays into our housing situation and we can't obviously ignore, but is short-term rentals. And so, Dick, maybe update us a little bit. What's the current council conversation around short-term rentals?
You bet. This is the contentious issue. All of us on council are talking to a lot of our citizens about concerns, support. People want us to be very heavy-handed. Others want us to leave it alone, free market, and everything in between. So, we're studying right now, but we absolutely have the attitude of everything's still on the table. We are still considering everything. We're trying to understand we're looking at fees. Quite honestly, that's no surprise. We've talked about it publicly. We're trying to understand what is the right amount? Because those fees will need to be spent to mitigating, what we're trying to place the fee on. So we're understanding exactly how much is the right amount for that. And, there's a big number out there to try to mitigate this.
Right.
So we're really looking at everything, but I think we're going to have to make some decisions fairly soon. Communities all over the state and all over the country are taking pretty aggressive approaches to this. And we've got a lot of licenses and we're seeing 6 to 2 dozen a week, more licenses showing up. So we watch the applications every week, and we look at the historical use of those units, and is it something that historically was a short-term rental and they're just renewing, or a new buyer is just doing the same as the old one, or is it was a conversion of a long-term rental, which is really disappointing. We're seeing quite a bit of those too. So this is a tough one. There's these are hard work making these calls, but it's important, and we're working hard at it, and I think we're probably, we're coming close. By the end of the year, I think we're going to have some decisions made and some ordinances passed. Yes,
because we're doing a study right now with a group to help us better understand, what dollar amount is it going to take? What do we really need? And Laurie, I'd love to just hear from you and maybe remind people, if they've never heard these numbers, how many housing units do we need?
Well, currently, the latest needs assessment indicates that we are short right now, today, 1,200 units. Primarily, a big chunk of those are rentals, so we're way, way low on rentals. Now, if we want to start to impact and reverse some trends that have been going the wrong way, we would love to have a big chunk of the jobs that are in our basin filled by people that live in our basin, to reduce the incommuting. We would like to have the right balance between resident occupied units and vacation homes. If we want to change some of those and get back to what our initial targets were, it's even more units than 1,200. So it's a big number, and it takes new construction, it takes preservation of existing units, it takes collaboration with the community, and public intervention, because the market would sort of naturally displace our workers further and further out. And that's inconsistent with our goal to be a real town where people live, work, play, raise family.
Yeah. Hey, we all view Breckenridge as special. That we don't necessarily have to do it like everyone else does. I don't know, I've been here 40 years, 41. And I just feel like that's always been our mantra. It's always how we have done things in Breckenridge, and we're always trying to do it better.
Right.
And we're nimble and able to pivot fairly quickly and accomplish this. And I think we're taking the same approach to this. So it's all about balance, but balance means everything. So.
Yeah, and I think it's worth pointing out as well, in 2019 we did our destination management plan, which then became our sort of council and community goals, and those were really developed with intense community stakeholders and buy-in and meetings, and that last goal is to fiercely protect the authentic character of Breckenridge, and I think that word fiercely is such the operating word there, and I think you all have shown how we're really trying to take that to heart and put that into our housing strategy. So thank you so much for being here and having this wonderful conversation.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Yeah.